ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Paul Brown Show. This evening, my guest will be Ms. Karen Wheeler, and she's with Clear Mind Counseling. How are you doing, Ms. Wheeler?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Tell the audience a little bit about Clear Mind Counseling.
Okay. Well, Clear Mind Counseling started out as a vision of mine several years ago, but I finally launched my own private practice in March of 2019. Currently, I've been in private practice with Clear Mind Counseling now since March. It was a vision of mine to be able to offer a type of individual therapy, group therapy, and specifically relapse prevention, engaging those individuals who are suffering with addiction and co-occurring disorders. Right now, I'm currently located off of Mallet Creek Church Road. It's on David Taylor Drive in the Charlotte area. Very excited because I just found a new space because I'm going to be doing some other things in my practice. And so I'll be moving. So this is an exciting time for me. I'll be relocating in about another month or so. So really excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell the audience a little bit about the qualification you have for your service.
Okay, so I am a licensed clinical addiction specialist. I'm also a master's level social worker. I'm an intern right now pursuing my CCS, Certified Clinical Supervisor. Okay. I've worked my entire career specifically with addictions, those individuals suffering with addiction. However, within the last 10 to 12 years, I've worked primarily on an intensive management unit, behavioral health unit at Novant. So my experience has expanded. Working more with dually diagnosed patients. I've had great exposure and experience helping individuals not only suffering with addiction, but also mental illness. And being able to see how those two illnesses coexist together has really had a major impact on my professionalism and also my ability to be able to help those individuals struggling in those areas.
Okay. With the experience that you have, expertise, what do you think are the biggest reason why people start using drugs and alcohol?
Well, Paul, I think there are a lot of different reasons. Many individuals are aware of, the environment being a factor, a very stressful environment. Genetic factors play a great part in it as well. Socioeconomic status are oftentimes triggers for individuals who have financial stressors, who may not have the best living environments growing up in an environment where drugs and alcohol are surrounding them. And oftentimes it's seen as the norm, to not really grow up and go to college, but actually to grow up in an environment where addiction is, and they just feel like, this is going to be my destination. So you have the environmental factor, you have the genetic factor, but a lot of studies now are looking more at the neuroscience, the brain chemistry. Individuals who suffer with addiction and mental illness have a different brain chemistry, and so they're more susceptible to developing addiction. And one of my favorite videos that I've shown oftentimes has been the hijack brain. That's a very familiar video that a lot of treatment centers back in the day have shown to kind of illustrate the impact of addiction on the brain, drug and alcohol use on the brain. So in short, to answer your question, I think there are many factors, and I think that we also need to be very creative in the way that we provide treatment for those individuals for that very reason. And so Clear Mind Counseling, that is my goal, that's my objective, is to be able to offer a different style of counseling to be able to meet that individual where they are, no matter what caused or led them down that path.
Okay. If I'm in your program, and a family member of myself contacts you and asks you how I'm doing, how would you go about in handling that situation?
Well, due to HIPAA laws and confidentiality laws, unless there's a signed release that you provided for me, I certainly would not be able to discuss, even with a family member, whether they know you there or not, if you have not given me written consent to speak to a family member or anyone for that matter. I don't have the right to do that, and I certainly would not acknowledge that you're engaged in services at Clear Mind Counseling unless I had that written consent.
Why would you consider that to be that confidentiality? Why do you feel that is such important to someone seeking help?
That's a great question because oftentimes, everybody doesn't understand the process of engaging in treatment. I feel like initially that's a huge step for someone to take. And if they do not come in the door with those natural supports and they're trying to establish that, oftentimes when people are in addiction, they burn many bridges, particularly family members, because they're the closest to us. And so people have different motives and different reasons for wanting to inquire who is in treatment and what they're doing. And so we want to guard that. We want to protect that confidentiality and facilitate an environment for that individual to begin the treatment process, to build up enough confidence, enough coping skills and strategies to be able to communicate, their journey, and acknowledge some of the things that they did that may have been harmful or harmful to their family members. So it's a part of the process, at the very beginning of that process. We want to create, as I stated, a safe environment and help support that individual to get to a point to say, hey, this is who I want to share this information with, and this is why. And one final note that I make to that is very much a part of the treatment process to be able to help them to identify positive supports, positive natural supports, who is going to be a benefit to be on that journey with you. And not everybody that's in your life needs to have access to that information.
That's a great answer. At Clear Mind Counseling, y'all provide one of the services y'all provide is family therapy. Why is that so important?
Because I believe that addiction is a family illness. I've done several trainings and presentations on the impact of addiction on the family. People do not become addicted, and the disease of addiction does not impact that individual individually. It impacts every single person that they come in contact with, and particularly the family. Individuals don't necessarily have to be living in the actual household with family members in order for them to be impacted by the disease of addiction. Oftentimes, they are greatly impacted simply by the fact that their loved ones who are struggling with addiction are not around. They isolate themselves from them. And it leaves the family members in turmoil, wondering, are they safe? What's going on with them? How can I help? Oftentimes, single moms that are raising young children, they often get into addiction, wonder, what did I do to cause it? Was there something that I could have done differently? And so we provide family therapy in an effort to try to educate the family about the impact. We talk about that genetic component. We talk about those areas and those things that happen that are far out of their control. That they could have been the best parent, could have provided every single thing that they possibly could, or for their spouse or whomever the identified patient is. They could have done all of the right things. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that person would or would not have developed a disease of addiction. So family therapy is more about education, it's more about support, and most importantly, it is introducing them to a support group that they can also engage in so that they will have continued support. The one thing that I often remind the family members is that the family can heal and get better, whether the identified client does or not. And that's really hard for a lot of family members to hear. But what I tell them is the principle of making sure that the family unit as a whole gets healthy. So when that individual decides that they are going to engage in treatment, in recovery, they have that natural support that is standing strong and available for them when they're ready.
I know. What are some more services that Clear Mind Counseling provide to our community?
Well, as I stated on my website, we list, of course, individual therapy, and those are 45-minute sessions. We offer that to individuals who may feel like, I'm not exactly sure if I want to engage in a group therapy setting. Um, so we offer individual, we offer group therapy, the Intense Relapse Prevention Group, which I just launched. It's a 7-week group. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 6 to 8:30 p.m. And that is geared more towards individuals who, they have had experience with recovery. They may have had a slip. They may have just gotten out of treatment and they need that little, something a little more intense than just a typical aftercare program. We offer that as well. I have a colleague with me, a partner with me, Yvonne Ori. Her information and credentials is also listed on the website. Yvonne is a licensed clinical social worker. She is also a substance abuse professional. We offer assessments for commercial drivers, so that in the event if whoever is operating, whatever individual that's operating and holds a commercial driver's license, be CDL, air pilots, train operators, and they may have had assessments or they may have been called in for a 4-cause drug screen and tested positive for a substance or been stopped. And they need to satisfy those recommendations and requirements before continuing with their job. We offer SAP assessments to help those individuals. EAP, we do accept EAP referrals. Those are typically 6 to 8 short sessions to help that individual identify which direction they may need to go in. They could have more mental illness than substance abuse, and we're able to provide those 6 sessions and get them into the right direction that they would need if we find that it's not substance abuse related. Of course, the family groups, family therapy we offer. Prime for Life, that is another service. I'm a certified Prime for Life instructor and ADEX instructor. And so that is more of your intervention. That's more education. That would be for individuals who do not have a substance abuse diagnosis. This is more for your young, I talk about my young adults who are experimenting with marijuana. And the buzz is it's all natural, it's not going to hurt you. And, but they still need to be educated about their risk of that being a gateway to harder drugs and developing addiction. And so those are the immediate services for clients that we provide, but we also provide supervision. Supervision for those pursuing certified substance abuse clinicians as well as LCAS. And Yvonne is able to provide supervision for individuals pursuing license in clinical social work.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we have some good services that you provide, Ms. Wheeler. I just want to know, when we talk about someone that's been in recovery, when they relapse, why is it so important that they go and get that help as soon as possible instead of, that pride taking place?
Exactly. And that's an awesome question and a very good point. I think, my experience working in this field, I have both personal and professional experience. And one of the things I would say, and you mentioned the word pride and ego keep a lot of people in active addiction for a longer period of time, particularly those individuals who have had long-term recovery. there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of guilt and remorse that goes along with it. And the vicious cycle of guilt, remorse, and addiction just continues. And one of the reasons why I was so committed to offering the 7-week intense relapse prevention group is to offer that service for those individuals. No judgment, judgment-free zone. It is a self-pay group. It is for individuals who may not want to use their insurance. They may have maxed out, and they still need treatment. They need that helping hand to just kind of get back, re-engage into the recovery community. And I will say, what an appropriate time right now that we're all dealing with the COVID-19 and everything is, through telehealth. It has provided an opportunity for individuals to engage in a more safer setting, I will say, a more comfortable setting, to log on to a group via Zoom. And be able to relate to other people, to know that you're not the only one that's had 10, 15 years of recovery and you relapsed, and to be able to have that commonality, to have that conversation and kind of network right there with individuals. And this is designed to not follow the format of a 12-step meeting. And I want to be very clear about that. The 7-week intense relapse prevention intense group is not 12-step meetings. That is a part of the treatment, but it's not 12-step meetings. This is a substance abuse group, and it's designed to help individuals identify what happened. Where did I fall off the wagon? What were some of the earmarked signs of relapse that were very glaring that I missed? And so it is definitely about empowering that individual, judgment-free, to take a look at some of the stressors, because surely the stressors that individuals come into treatment with, as the gifts of sobriety begin to overflow in their lives, stressors change. They have what I like to call problems of luxury, stressors on their job, whereas they may have entered recovery and they were unemployable and didn't have a job. So those were not the stresses that they were dealing with. And now they're in recovery 10 or 12 years and they have a highly stressful job and started to go to less meetings. Started to, fall off as far as self-care and doing things that they needed to do for themselves. So those are just an example of some of the things that we talk about in those groups to help them identify, some of those triggers.
I know we have a lot of major companies that's out here in our community that have employees that may need that additional education on being sober when at work because of the safety reason. Why it's important that our managers, our owners contact Clear Mind Counseling as far as educating their employees on the safety of being sober while at work.
Mm-hmm. Very important. And that kind of spills right into the SAP evaluations that Yvonne does. Safety first, because it impacts everybody, not just the individual who is struggling with addiction, but it impacts the company. It impacts performance. It impacts productivity there at the company, the business as a whole. Just as the disease of addiction impacts the family as a whole, it will impact any unit, any type of organization. And so, yes, it's very important for employers who may not be knowledgeable of the impact of addiction to have that knowledge. And one of the most important things that I believe for business owners to know about addiction is that your employer that you've invested time, money, and training in is very salvageable. Many years ago, I would imagine, when people were testing positive or they got reprimanded for being under the influence, not necessarily on the job, but just poor performance. And maybe the employers didn't even know that addiction played a part in it. And they just slowly, progressively lost their job due to poor performance. These individuals are very salvageable. And so they are hard workers. They're very dedicated. And I will add that being an addict and an alcoholic is hard work as well. It takes a lot of work, from these individuals to try to figure out and maneuver. And, it's a lot of energy and work and time that goes into using and drinking. And so we want to be able to help them to turn that skill set around and use it for their good. And that's one of the things that I personally want to be able to communicate to employers. How can we salvage this individual and maintain their talents, their skills, and continue to be an asset to your organization?
Ms. Wheeler, we're running kind of short on time. Tell the audience why they should go to your service, Clear Mind Counseling. What makes Clear Mind Counseling the best counseling service in the country?
Well, that is a goal, and I appreciate you speaking that into existence. The best in the country. I am an individual who is very passionate about working with this population. If there's one thing that I can offer is definitely the passion, the commitment to being able to work with an individual. Very accommodating. I hold the welfare of the clients who choose to allow me to be a part of their journey in recovery. I hold it to the greatest esteem, and I value their confidentiality, and am very committed to creating a safe space for them to begin that journey. And I'm honored to take that journey, walk that journey with them one day at a time.
If someone wanted to get more information about yourself, Clear Mind Counseling, how would they go about doing that?
They certainly can log onto my website. I have a website, Clear Mind Counseling, LLC.com. You can certainly find me there. You can contact me directly at 803-230-6168. That is my business as well as my personal phone. So if you have questions, you can certainly reach out to me there. And also, you have my information as well. So
yes. Thank you, Ms. Wheeler, for coming on the show, and I look forward to seeing you some more talking about Clear Mind Counseling.
All right. Thank you so much again. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching the show, and you be encouraged. Thank you.
How did they feel about you running for mayor and you being the mayor of Charlotte?
I will tell you, I think my kids would, my son Kwame and my daughter Aisha and their spouses would do anything. They've encouraged me. My son is the young man that you saw putting out signs on the day before the election in the middle of a thunderstorm. My daughter still helps me with social media and helps me communicate who I am. I believe that your children understand best your motivations, and they know your heart.
Correct.
And so they're very, very supportive of me, and I hope one day that I will be able to give them all of the respect that they're due for that. Already they've got all my love, but I want them to know how much I respect them as adults.
I know Charlotte is really growing. Some of the issues is affordable housing and, it's just jobs.
Yeah.
How do you address that?
Well, I want people to really understand how fast we're growing.
Correct.
We have 1,000 people a week moving into our city.
And that's great.
Now that's 5,200 people a year. And many of them come without jobs, but many of them are trained and have the ability to get jobs. They've got a college degree, they've got expertise and certifications in technology or finance. What I'm most concerned about, and always have been, are those people that live in our city that never had a chance to participate in the economy. Okay. Those folks that have been passing our bond referendums and living here while we're growing and creating this wonderful banking and financial center. Now we need to focus on making sure that they can be here. I think a city that's diverse has to have different levels of economics. I wouldn't want to be a place where I never saw anyone that had that soul or cultural experience, or people that really cared about what we were doing for our kids, teachers and firefighters and police officers. So affordable housing has been a key initiative. Correct. This year, thank you to the voters for approving a $50 million bond referendum. And thanks to the private sector for recognizing that a diverse workforce is what makes it possible for Charlotte to be what it is.
Well, I talked to an individual that I had sent to prison for committing murder, 2 counts of murder. And he was 17 years old when he committed the murder, and he's now 21 years old in prison. And I talked to him a couple of times since he's been in prison, and he said something that really just, touched me. He says, when we were talking about why he did the murder and what happened in his life, he says that the negative in the community was more consistent than the positive. And I asked him to explain that to me. And we just talked about it. And that's something I always remember him talking about, because he said, out of all the mentoring groups and all the people who come and believe that they are really helping, they're only helping for 4 hours once a month or once a weekend, 4 hours. And he said, they take us out, they take us to the basketball games, they get us tickets to the Panthers game, we go to play golf, we learn tennis and all, and we always go eat pizza, and then they drop us right back into the problems that we had. But where are they when we want to talk to them at 2 o'clock in the morning, or are they really keeping up with me prior to that weekend they're going to be with me? Why not call me on a Tuesday and says, what's going on? Let me just pick you up and let's talk to you. So then when they feel like nobody really cares, they have a sense of not caring for themselves too.